Parents demanded I hand my house over to my sister or face a lawsuit. My lawyer burst out laughing, and that's when I finally felt free. What came after left them broke and speechless. Right now, I'm sitting in my living room, staring out over the calm lake view that my folks insisted should belong to my sister instead. The same view they once claimed was wasted on me. The same house they threatened to sue me for. The same piece of property that set off everything that came next. My name's Lauren, I'm 31, and for most of my life I've been the invisible daughter. The one who followed the rules, worked hard, and somehow still managed to disappoint. My sister Megan, 3 years younger, has always been the favorite, the golden child who could do no wrong. She got the bigger bedroom, the newer car, and a college fund that mysteriously tripled in size compared to mine. I used to tell myself it didn't matter. I worked 3 jobs through college, graduated with honors, and built a solid career in software development all on my own. The real story begins with this house. 2 years ago, my grandmother passed away. Grandma June was nothing like my parents. She noticed me, really saw me. We'd spend hours talking about books, our dreams, and what life might look like beyond the small town where I grew up. When she got sick, I was the one who took care of her. Every weekend I drove hours to her place, helped with her medication, cooked meals, and sat by her side through chemo treatments. My parents would stop by maybe once a month, if that. Megan came twice the entire year, both times asking Grandma for money. When Grandma June died, she left me her house. Not the old family home where my dad grew up, but her lake house, a beautiful 3-bedroom cabin she bought herself after my grandpa passed, her peaceful getaway. It was worth around $800,000, tucked away in one of the most desirable spots in northern Michigan. She left me a handwritten note too. For Lauren, who knows what it means to truly be present. May you find peace here. I cried for hours when I read it. My parents were furious. Not heartbroken, not mourning their loss, just mad about the money. 3 days after the funeral, they showed up at my apartment in Chicago. My mom Ellen had that tight, bitter look she gets when she's about to start a fight, and my dad Greg looked like he was barely keeping it together. This is unacceptable, Mom snapped the second I opened the door, not even saying hello. Your grandmother clearly wasn't in her right mind when she made that will. She was completely lucid, I said, doing my best to stay calm. She knew exactly what she wanted. That house should be split between you and Megan, Dad argued. It's not fair that you get everything. I don't have everything, I reminded him. She left you her jewelry, her savings account, and the family home. This was her personal property, and she chose to leave it to me. Megan stood behind them, eyes shiny with fake tears. I can't believe you're being so selfish, Lauren. Grandma loved both of us. Then she would have left it to both of us, I said, feeling something cold and solid settle in my chest. But she didn't. That was 2 years ago. Naturally, they contested the will. They spent 6 months and probably 30 grand on lawyers trying to prove Grandma June wasn't of sound mind. They lost. They lost hard. The judge reviewed her medical records, talked to her doctors, and ruled that she'd been completely competent when she signed it. The house was mine legally, permanently, and beyond dispute. I thought that was the end of it. I couldn't have been more wrong. About 8 months ago, I finally moved into the lake house. I'd been working remotely since the pandemic and was done with city life. Done with Chicago's noise, the endless traffic, and that lonely feeling you get even when surrounded by millions of people. The lake house felt like coming home. I spent months fixing it up, not because it needed much work, but because I wanted it to feel like mine while still honoring Grandma's memory. I kept her rose garden, repainted the walls in soft colors that reminded me of summer mornings, and turned one of the bedrooms into my office. Another became a guest room, and I left the master bedroom almost exactly as she had it, a 4-poster bed facing the lake. For the first time in my adult life, I felt genuinely happy, peaceful. Then 3 weeks ago they showed up. Unannounced. I was in the middle of a video meeting when I heard the pounding on my door. Aggressive, impatient, and loud. I muted myself, excused the interruption, and opened the door to find both my parents standing there, Megan by their side, and behind them a man in a cheap-looking suit holding a briefcase. We need to talk, Mom said, pushing past me without hesitation. You can't just barge in, I protested, but they were already in my living room. Megan glanced around, eyes sweeping over the furniture like she was appraising it. "Nice place," she said, running her fingers along my bookshelf. "Must get lonely out here by yourself. What do you want?" I asked flatly. Dad gestured toward the man with the briefcase. "This is Martin Cho, our lawyer. We're here to make you a generous offer." I laughed out loud. "An offer? For what?" "For the house," Mom said like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Megan's getting married in 6 months. She and Ryan need a place to start their life together. This house is perfect." The audacity took my breath away. "This house is mine. It's not for sale. We're prepared to offer you $200,000, Dad said. "That's more than fair." "The house is worth $800,000, I replied. "And again, it's not for sale." Megan's eyes filled with tears, her signature move since childhood. "Lauren, please. Ryan and I can't afford a nice home. We're just getting started. You already have a great job. You don't need this big house. It's selfish to keep it all to yourself when family needs it." "Family," I repeated, letting the word roll off my tongue like it left a bad taste. Where was family when I was juggling 3 jobs through college? Where was family when I was spending every weekend taking care of Grandma? Where was family when you all tried to steal this house from me through a lawsuit? "That's ancient history," my mother snapped. "We're here now, trying to make things right for everyone. Megan deserves a nice home to start her marriage in. You're being spiteful." "I'm being spiteful?" I could hear the sharp edge in my own voice rising. "You show up uninvited, bring a lawyer into my house, and offer me a quarter of what the property's worth. And I'm the one being spiteful?" Martin Cho cleared his throat like he was trying to sound important. "Ms. Parker," he began, "perhaps we should handle this matter a bit more rationally. Your parents have consulted me about potential legal options regarding this property." "Legal options?" I repeated slowly, my pulse kicking up. "There are precedents for family inheritance disputes," he said, pulling out some papers from his briefcase like he was performing in a courtroom drama. "In some cases, courts have determined that inheritances should be divided more equitably among siblings, particularly when the deceased may have been unduly influenced." "We already went through this," I said, feeling my heart hammer against my ribs. "The court ruled Grandma June was completely competent. That was about her mental capacity," he countered smoothly. "This would be a separate issue entirely. We'd argue that you exerted undue influence over your grandmother, isolating her from the rest of the family, persuading her to change her will in your favor." I stared at him, then at my parents, and finally at Megan, who still had that fake trembling lip thing going on, her best impression of a wounded puppy. "You're threatening to sue me," I said flatly. "We don't want it to come to that," my dad said, trying to sound reasonable. "Just be fair. Give Megan the house and we can put all this behind us as a family." "Get out," I said quietly. "Lauren," my mother began, but I cut her off. "Get out of my house right now before I call the police." Martin Cho handed me his card as if he were doing me a favor. "If you change your mind, we're ready to file the lawsuit within the week. I'd strongly advise you to consider settling this privately." They left, Megan shooting me a tear-streaked glare that barely covered the hatred behind her eyes. I stood there in the doorway watching them drive away, shaking so badly I had to grip the frame to keep myself upright. The next morning I called my own lawyer. Jennifer Walsh, who'd handled the original will dispute, knew my family's tactics all too well. I explained what had happened, every word of their threats, every smug comment from their lawyer. She laughed. Not a nervous laugh, but this bright, amused sound that made me blink in confusion. "Lauren," she said after catching her breath, "they don't have a case. Not even close. In fact, if they actually file, I can almost guarantee they'll get sanctioned. Their lawyer should know better than to file something that frivolous." "He sounded serious," I said, still a little shaken. "Of course he did," she replied. "He's being paid to sound serious. But a claim of undue influence after a judge has already confirmed your grandmother was competent? With a 2-year gap between the will and her passing, and medical records proving she was clear-minded to the end? They'll be laughed out of court." For the first time since my parents' visit, I felt something besides fear, something sharper. Anger. Real clean, justified anger. "What should I do?" I asked. "Let them sue," Jennifer said. Actually, I hope they do because then we can countersue for harassment, legal fees, maybe even defamation if they start spreading lies about you manipulating your grandmother. Plus, she added, her tone shifting, we might have another advantage. What kind of advantage? I asked. Your grandmother's estate is still technically open, she explained. There were some unresolved tax matters. Since I'm still representing the estate, I have access to all her financial records. And while going through them, I found something pretty interesting. She wouldn't say more on the phone, just told me to come by her office the next day. I barely slept that night, not because of anxiety this time, but because of what felt like possibility. The next afternoon, I drove out to Traverse City. Jennifer had her conference table covered in neatly arranged papers, each with colorful sticky notes marking specific pages. Her assistant brought coffee, and once we were alone, she got right to the point. Your grandmother kept extremely detailed records, Jennifer began. I already knew that, but I found something in her files that changes things completely. She slid a folder toward me. Inside were bank statements, canceled checks, and notes written in Grandma June's tidy handwriting. Your grandmother had been lending money to your parents for years, Jennifer explained. We're not talking small amounts, around $150,000 total over the last decade. I blinked down at the numbers, struggling to process them. Wait, what? They were loans, she said. Not gifts. All properly documented. Promissory notes, repayment schedules, even interest rates. Your parents were supposed to pay her back. Did they? I asked. Jennifer smiled, the sharp, knowing kind of smile. They made 3 payments. All in the first year. After that, nothing. Your grandmother tried to collect, gently at first, then more persistently. I've got letters, emails, text messages, every excuse imaginable. Megan needed a new car. They were redoing their kitchen. Your dad's business was having a rough quarter. By the time your grandmother passed, they owed her a total of $147,000, interest included. I sat there stunned as she continued. And that debt doesn't just vanish with death. It becomes part of the estate, which means as her primary beneficiary, you've inherited the right to collect. My mind started to clear piece by piece. So I can demand repayment? Exactly, Jennifer said. And there's more. She pulled out another file. Your parents also borrowed $50,000 specifically for Megan's college fund. There's a signed agreement that the money was to be used solely for her education. I didn't even have to ask. Let me guess, I said dryly. It wasn't. Jennifer nodded. Megan enrolled at community college for 1 semester, then dropped out. That entire semester cost $3,200. Jennifer looked up from her notes and said, I pulled Megan's financial records while investigating. That $50,000 your grandmother gave for tuition? It went toward a down payment on her condo, a new car, a European vacation, and a bunch of shopping sprees. Every bit of it is documented online, too. She couldn't help bragging about it on social media. So they defrauded Grandma, I said quietly. Technically, they breached a contract and misused funds, Jennifer corrected. But either way, you're within your legal rights to demand full repayment, all of it. My mind immediately went to my parents' house, their cars, the image they tried so hard to maintain. Can they even afford that? Jennifer's look said it all. Not a chance. Your dad's business is tanking. I did some digging, he's drowning in debt, maxed out on credit cards, and the house is mortgaged to the limit. Your mom hasn't worked in 2 decades. They're barely keeping up appearances, living paycheck to paycheck. And as for Megan and her fiancé Ryan, he sells cars, maybe makes $45,000 a year, and she's a part-time yoga instructor. They're barely covering their condo payments, let alone something like this. The picture was coming together in my mind. So that's what this is really about, I said slowly. They need cash. Jennifer nodded. Exactly. They're desperate. And desperate people make stupid, dangerous moves, but they're also easy to corner. I stared down at the stack of documents spread across her desk. Years of my parents' greed and manipulation laid bare in ink and numbers. So what's our move? I asked. Jennifer leaned back, tapping her pen thoughtfully. We've got options. We can issue a formal demand for repayment right now. That would probably push them into bankruptcy or force them to settle. Or we could report Megan's misuse of her education fund. which would open a can of worms for her. Or, she paused, giving me a pointed look, we can wait until they actually file the lawsuit, then drop all this on them in court, along with a countersuit. What happens if they sue and we go that route? Best case scenario, she said with a grin. They'll be forced to pay your legal fees, get sanctioned for wasting the court's time, and still owe you the original debt. We could even pursue fraud charges. Worst case for them, they lose everything: the house, the cars, their credit, Megan's condo. Every asset they've got could be seized to cover what they owe. I should have felt conflicted or guilty or something. But sitting there, staring at proof of all the years they'd taken advantage of Grandma June, the lies, the favoritism, the entitlement, I didn't feel remorse. Just a cold, clear sense of justice. Let's wait, I decided finally. If they file, we hit back with everything. If they don't, we give them 30 days to pay up. Jennifer smiled approvingly. I'll start drafting the paperwork. I didn't have to wait long. 5 days later, a courier showed up at my door with a thick envelope. I'd been officially served. My parents and Megan were suing me for undue influence, elder manipulation, and fraudulent acquisition of property. They wanted the house sold and the proceeds split evenly between the grandchildren, which meant Megan and me. I called Jennifer the second I read it. They actually went through with it. Excellent, she said, sounding almost cheerful. I'll file our countersuit tomorrow. This is going to get interesting. And she was right, it did. Within hours, word spread through the family like wildfire. My Aunt Carol, Dad's older sister, called me in a fury. Lauren, what the hell is going on? Your parents are saying you stole Grandma's house. I didn't steal anything, I said evenly. Grandma left it to me in her will, a will the court already confirmed as valid. They're telling everyone you manipulated her, Carol said. That you kept her away from the family. My chest tightened. I was the one caring for her while she was dying, Carol. Where were they? Where were you? There was a pause on the other end, long and uncomfortable. Then quietly, I didn't realize it was that bad. None of you did, I said, my voice steady but low. Because none of you showed up. Carol exhaled audibly. Your father called me yesterday asking to borrow money for the lawsuit. I told him no and he lost it. He's been asking everyone for loans lately. Did you know he owed Grandma nearly $150,000? I asked. Silence. Then stunned. What? So I told her everything: the loans, the repayment agreements, the misused education fund. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she said softly, I had no idea. Greg always acted like everything was perfect: the business, the house, the cars. It's all smoke and mirrors, I said. They're broke, Carol. Completely broke. That's what this lawsuit is really about. They need money, and they thought bullying me would be easier than facing their own mess. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to fight, I said simply. And I'm going to win. She was quiet for a few seconds, then said, I believe you will. And Lauren, I'm sorry for not being there when your grandmother was sick, for not seeing what was really happening, for everything. It was the first real apology I'd ever heard from someone in my family. I didn't even know how to respond. Thank you, I said finally. That means a lot. If you need anything, you call me, she said firmly. I mean that. Over the next few weeks, I watched my family start to crack apart. Carol talked to my dad's brothers, Tom and David. Uncle Tom was disgusted by the lawsuit and immediately took my side. Uncle David tried to stay neutral at first, but eventually admitted Dad owed him $20,000 from a loan 2 years ago. My mom's side was smaller. Just her sister Linda. She'd never liked my dad and always said Mom had married beneath her. When she heard about the lawsuit, she called me directly. Your mother's making a huge mistake, Linda said. I've tried talking to her, but she won't listen. She's convinced you're stealing from Megan. Megan didn't even visit Grandma when she was dying, I said quietly. I know, Linda replied. I remember when you had the flu and couldn't come one weekend. I sat with June myself. She talked about you the whole time. How proud she was, how much she wished your parents could see you the way she did. I had to blink back tears. I didn't know that, I said. She knew exactly what she was doing with that will, Linda said firmly. She knew who deserved her house. Don't you dare back down. The preliminary hearing was set for 6 weeks later. Jennifer went all in. She didn't just prepare our defense, she built a countersuit that could have leveled a small army. She subpoenaed bank records, pulled together the loan documents, and organized proof of Megan's misuse of the education fund. 3 days before the hearing, my phone rang. It wasn't Dad. It wasn't Megan. It was my mom. "Lauren, we need to talk," she said, skipping any greeting. "Talk to my lawyer," I replied. "Please just listen," she said quickly. "We're willing to drop the lawsuit if you agree to sell the house and give Megan half the proceeds." I laughed out loud, sharp and bitter. "So, you'll drop your baseless lawsuit if I hand you $400,000? How generous." "Don't be sarcastic," she snapped. "This is serious. You're tearing this family apart." I couldn't help but scoff. "I'm tearing the family apart? You sued me, Mom. You accused me of manipulating Grandma on her deathbed. You're trying to steal the one thing she wanted me to have." "We're just trying to make things fair," she insisted. Megan deserves exactly what Grandma left her," I cut in, which was nothing, because she never cared about her. "None of you did." "That's not true," she said quietly. "When was the last time you visited her, Mom? And I don't mean before she got sick. I mean, when's the last time you called her just to talk, not to ask for money?" Silence. "That's what I thought," I said. "See you in court." I hung up before she could answer. The hearing turned out to be everything I hoped for, and then some. My parents showed up with Martin Cho, looking smug and confident, while Megan wore a soft pastel dress and clung to Ryan's hand like she was auditioning for sympathy. They clearly coached her to play the victim. Jennifer walked in carrying 3 bankers' boxes of evidence. The judge, the Honorable Margaret Fisher, was in her 60s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, the kind of woman who could silence a room just by clearing her throat. She opened with the filings, then glanced up at Martin. "Mr. Cho, I presided over the original will contest 2 years ago. I personally reviewed June Parker's medical records and found her to be of completely sound mind. What new evidence do you have that contradicts that ruling?" Martin rose slowly, straightening his tie. "Your Honor, we're not disputing Mrs. Parker's mental state. We're arguing that the defendant exerted undue influence, isolating her grandmother and persuading her to alter her will." Judge Fisher looked unimpressed. "That will was written 3 years before Mrs. Parker's death. Are you suggesting this undue influence began that far back?" "We believe the defendant had been working on her grandmother for years," Martin said, "gradually alienating her from the rest of the family, positioning herself as caretaker to secure a larger inheritance." Judge Fisher turned her attention to me. "Miss Parker, did you care for your grandmother during her illness?" I stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I drove to her house every weekend for the last year of her life. I helped with her medication, cooked her meals, and took her to her medical appointments." "And where was the rest of the family during this time?" "They visited occasionally," I said evenly. "My parents maybe once a month. My sister twice. Total." The judge turned to my parents. "Is that accurate?" My dad got to his feet reluctantly. "We had obligations, Your Honor. Work responsibilities. Lauren was single and worked from home. She had more flexibility." "I see," the judge said. "Did you contribute financially to your mother's care?" Dad hesitated. "We helped where we could." Jennifer stood. "Your Honor, if I may, we have documents that directly contradict that statement, and also explain why this lawsuit is not only unfounded but verging on fraudulent." Judge Fisher raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." Jennifer began laying it out, one piece at a time. The loan agreements, the repayment schedules, the misuse of the education fund, the fake image of success they'd been projecting while drowning in debt. As she spoke, I watched Martin's confident expression fade from smug to uneasy to downright panicked. "Your Honor," Jennifer continued, "the plaintiffs owed Mrs. June Parker $147,000 at the time of her death. They borrowed another $50,000 for their daughter Megan's college education, which was instead spent on personal luxuries. They made a total of 3 payments in 10 years. This lawsuit isn't about fairness. It's about money. Desperation, plain and simple." Judge Fisher turned to my parents with a look that could have melted steel. "Is this true?" My mother's tears began to fall. Real ones this time. Not the manipulative kind Megan had perfected. We were going to pay her back, Dad stammered. The business had setbacks, but we were working on it. For 10 years. Judge Fisher said, incredulous. You were working on it for 10 years while suing your daughter for supposedly manipulating your mother? It's not like that, Megan blurted, jumping to her feet. Grandma knew we needed the money. She wanted to help her family. Then she would have made it a gift, not a loan, Judge Fisher snapped. Sit down, Miss Parker. Megan froze, then sat stunned. Probably the first time in her life someone had told her no, and meant it. Mr. Cho, the judge said, turning to him. Were you aware of these debts when you filed this case? Martin cleared his throat, visibly sweating. My clients mentioned some financial history, Your Honor, but characterized it as normal family assistance. So they lied to you, Judge Fisher said flatly. I wouldn't phrase it like that, he stammered. Her tone went cold. Here's how I'm going to phrase it. This lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. The plaintiffs will pay the defendant's legal fees. And I'm referring this matter to the State Bar for review of your professional conduct, Mr. Cho. Then she turned to my parents. As for the debts owed to Mrs. Parker's estate, that's a separate civil matter. But if you know what's good for you, you'll work out a repayment plan with your daughter's attorney immediately. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down hard, final as a guillotine. My parents didn't move. Megan just sat there, tears streaking her face, as the reality of it all finally hit. This time the tears were real. Megan was sobbing, and Ryan looked like he wished he could vanish into thin air. Martin Cho was scrambling to pack up his files, already trying to distance himself from the disaster he'd helped create. Jennifer leaned toward me and whispered, "That went even better than I expected. What happens now?" I murmured back. "Now we negotiate," she said quietly. "They have to cover your legal fees, which will be substantial, and they still owe the estate $197,000. They don't have that kind of money, so we'll settle for whatever we can recover." "I don't want their money," I said, realizing I meant it. "I just want them to leave me alone." Jennifer studied me for a moment, then nodded. "We can make that happen." In the days after the hearing, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: vindication. It was sweet, but it came with complications I didn't expect. News of the case spread through our small town faster than wildfire. The local paper ran a carefully worded piece about the dismissed lawsuit, vague enough to avoid legal trouble, but obvious enough that anyone who knew our family understood exactly what went down. My phone started buzzing nonstop. Old family friends, former neighbors, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some called to offer sympathy or quiet support. Others just wanted gossip. A few even tried to lecture me about forgiveness and the importance of family. But one call stood out above the rest. It was from Mrs. Patterson, Grandma June's closest friend. She was 91 now, still sharp as a tack, and never one to sugarcoat anything. "Your grandmother would be proud of you," she said the second I answered. "She worried about this, you know. Worried that Greg and Ellen would pull something like this after she was gone." "She knew?" I asked, stunned. "Of course she knew," Mrs. Patterson said. "June wasn't blind to her son's faults. She loved him, but she saw him clearly. She saw all of them clearly. That's why she made sure her will was airtight. Why she documented everything. She was protecting you, Lauren, even after she was gone." I had to sit down. "I wish she'd told me." "She didn't want to burden you," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "You already had enough on your plate taking care of her. But she made me promise to call you if things went sideways. Took me a while to work up the nerve, but when I read that article I knew it was time." She went on to tell me stories I'd never heard. How my parents had been borrowing money from Grandma for years, always with promises to repay that never happened. How Megan only ever called when she wanted something. How Grandma had quietly started keeping detailed records about 5 years before she died, sensing trouble on the horizon. "She set up a paper trail on purpose," Mrs. Patterson explained. "Every loan noted, every promise logged. She told me once, if Greg and Ellen ever try to fight Lauren after I'm gone, she'll have everything she needs to defend herself. Your grandmother was a strategic woman." After that call, I finally understood the full depth of Grandma June's foresight. The house wasn't just a gift, it was a shield. She'd known they'd come after me, and she'd armed me with the means to fight back. The thought made me cry, not out of sadness this time but out of gratitude. A week later, the entire situation took another unexpected turn. Ryan called me directly. For a moment I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. "Lauren, please don't hang up," he said immediately. "I need to talk to you about Megan." "I don't think that's a good idea," I replied carefully. "She doesn't know I'm calling," he rushed out. "She'd lose her mind if she found out, but I can't keep doing this. I can't watch her spiral over this house anymore." I stayed quiet, letting him talk. "She's obsessed," he said. "She talks about that lake house constantly. How it should be hers, how you stole it, how unfair it all is. She spends hours scrolling through real estate listings, decorating the place in her head, building Pinterest boards full of furniture she's going to buy when she gets the house. It's not normal, and I can't make her see it." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked softly. "Because I'm about to call off the wedding," he said. "I love her, or at least I thought I did. But this whole ordeal has shown me sides of her I can't unsee. The entitlement, the manipulation, the lack of empathy. I've watched her cry to her parents about how cruel you are, and then laugh about how they'll make you pay. It's ugly, Lauren. She's ugly inside, and I can't marry someone like that." I felt a surprising wave of sympathy for him. "I'm sorry you're going through this," I said. "Don't be," he replied. "You tried to warn me, not directly, but I could tell. Back at family dinners I'd catch you watching her, watching them all. I thought you were jealous. Now I realize you were just trying to survive." He called off the wedding 2 days later. Megan blamed me, of course. Aunt Carol told me she showed up at my parents' house in hysterics, screaming that I'd ruined her life, that I'd turned Ryan against her. The irony, that she was blaming me for her own behavior, was lost on no one but her. 2 weeks after that, we had our settlement meeting in Jennifer's office. My parents arrived without Megan but brought a new lawyer, a bankruptcy attorney named Sarah Chan, no relation to Martin. Sarah was blunt, professional, and clearly exhausted by them already. "My clients are prepared to file for bankruptcy," she began. "They have roughly $80,000 in home equity, some retirement savings they could liquidate with penalties, and a few personal assets. Altogether, maybe $150,000 in value. They owe the estate $197,000, Jennifer countered smoothly, plus $45,000 in legal fees. That's $242,000 total, which they can't pay without filing bankruptcy. If they do, Sarah said, those debts would be discharged. Parker would receive only a partial payment as an unsecured creditor. I sat there watching my parents while the lawyers talked. My dad looked old, not just tired but defeated. My mom's hands trembled in her lap. And all I could think about was Grandma June, her quiet strength, her meticulous planning, her love expressed through every careful decision she'd made to protect me long after she was gone. "What about Megan?" I asked suddenly, and everyone turned to look at me. "Megan benefited from the misused education fund," I continued. "What happens to her?" Sarah Chung glanced toward my parents. "Megan isn't part of these proceedings," she said. "The loan was to your parents." "But she received the money," I said. "The down payment for her condo came from that fund." Jennifer understood immediately. "We could pursue Megan separately to recover those funds," she said. My mother finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Please don't. Megan and Ryan just bought that condo. If you go after her, they'll lose it. Like you tried to make me lose Grandma's house." I asked quietly. My father's head snapped up. "We were desperate," he said. "The business was failing. We were drowning in debt. We thought if we could just get that house, sell it, we could start over. By taking what was mine, what Grandma wanted me to have," I said. "We made a mistake," my mother whispered. "A terrible mistake. We see that now." I looked at them, really looked, and searched for some trace of affection, some leftover spark of love. There was nothing. Just the hollow emptiness where a family should have been. "Here's my offer," I said finally. "You sign an agreement never to contact me again. No calls, no visits, no letters. You're out of my life completely. In return, I'll settle the estate debt for whatever you can pay without filing bankruptcy, and I won't go after Megan." My parents stared at me. My mother's face crumpled. "You're disowning us," she said. "I'm accepting what's been true for years," I replied. "You never wanted a daughter. You wanted a safety net. Someone to clean up your messes and bail out your golden child. I'm done being that person." "Lauren, please," my father began, but I cut him off. "Those are my terms. Take them or leave them." Sarah Chun turned to my parents, and after a long silence, my father gave a slow nod. My mother was crying, but she nodded too. We spent the next hour finalizing the details. They would liquidate what they could and pay the estate $85,000. They would sign a binding agreement never to contact me again. In exchange, I would drop any pursuit of Megan and release them from further collection and legal fees. When the papers were signed, my parents stood. At the door, my mother turned to me, eyes red and voice shaking. "I hope you regret this someday," she said. I met her gaze. "I won't." They left, and I never saw them again. The aftermath was messier than the resolution. Aunt Carol stayed in touch, careful to respect my boundaries but wanting to keep our relationship. Uncle Tom sent a handwritten card apologizing for not seeing what was happening sooner. Aunt Linda called every week for months just to check in. Megan tried contacting me once 3 months after the settlement, through a long email filled with blame and excuses. How I destroyed the family, how cold I was, how Grandma would be ashamed of me. I deleted it without replying. I used the settlement money to start a scholarship fund at the local community college in Grandma June's name, for non-traditional students returning to school. The first recipient was a single mom in her 40s working toward her nursing degree. Grandma would have loved that. I still live in the lake house. It's fully mine now, physically, legally, emotionally. I built a sunroom facing the water, redid the kitchen, and turned the garden into something that keeps her spirit alive while reflecting my own touch. I work remotely, walk the shoreline every morning, and have built a life that feels completely, genuinely mine. I've made friends here who know me simply as Lauren, the woman who lives in the blue house by the lake, not as anyone's daughter or sister. I've dated a little, taken up photography, learned to kayak, even started a blog about elder care that's quietly grown a loyal following. I've learned how to be alone without being lonely. Sometimes I hear updates from Aunt Carol. My parents had to sell their house, move into a small condo. Dad's business went under. They're living on Social Security and whatever my mom can earn part-time. Megan and Ryan are still together, barely, struggling financially but still hanging on to their condo. I don't feel guilty. They made their choices, I made mine. The hardest part was grieving the family I never truly had. Accepting that my parents would never love me the way parents should, that Megan would never be the sister I imagined as a kid, that some relationships are toxic and the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. There's freedom in that grief, though, freedom from waiting, from hoping, from wanting things to be different. A year after the settlement, I got an email from a cousin I barely remembered. Melissa, my uncle's daughter. She'd heard about everything and wanted to reach out. "I understand if you don't want to talk to family," she wrote. "But I went through something similar. Different situation, same kind of pain. I cut ties 5 years ago. Best decision I ever made. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." We started emailing, then talking regularly. Melissa lived in Oregon, worked as a therapist, and had built a peaceful, independent life far from the chaos. She became the sister Megan never was. Someone who understood the loneliness, the rejection, and the strength it takes to choose yourself. Through her, I found others, people who grew up like me, children of narcissists, survivors of manipulation, those who'd chosen healing over obligation. It was like finding a hidden community of people who finally understood. I realized that what happened to me wasn't rare. Families like mine exist everywhere. Polished on the outside, poisoned underneath. And I learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. I'm 33 now. It's been 18 months since I last spoke to my parents. The lake house is mine in every way. The garden is alive with roses Grandma would have adored. My work fulfills me, my friendships are genuine, and my peace is real. On quiet mornings when the lake is glassy and the sun's just breaking the horizon, I sit on the dock with my coffee and think of Grandma June, her steadiness, her kindness, her faith in me. I think of the gifts she left behind. Not just the house but the courage to claim my own life. Thank you. I whisper to the water, to the sunrise, to her memory. The house stands behind me, strong and warm and wholly mine. Not just because I fought for it or even because I won, but because someone who truly loved me wanted me to have a place where I belonged. And here in Grandma's house by the lake, I finally do. The fight is over, the family's gone, but I have everything that matters. Peace, freedom, home, and I wouldn't change a thing.